thought it was a no-brainer after that. Well, why doesn't it all go in bulk? But there's some constraints. It doesn't always work. If you look at wines that have a PDO or an IGP, if you look at spirits that have a GI, it's not always possible to bottle them outside the production area. Has anybody ever tried to find the technical specification for a PDO? It's a nightmare. Some of them are quite easy to find. Others you have to go through the website of the Consorcio or the Consejo Regulador and try and find them. They're not all published by the EU. Some of them are very easy to find because the body that looks after them wants to publicise them. So a good example is the Scotch whisky GI. It's very easy to find as part of the Scotch whisky regulations. But I've picked out a couple of examples for you there. Prosecco, the specification for the DOCG says it's got to be bottled in the production area. So you can't have bulk Prosecco going out and being bottled somewhere else. You're very welcome to take Prosecco out and bottle Italian sparkling wine, if that's what you want, but then isn't part of the brand value of Prosecco that you're calling it Prosecco. It's not an Italian sparkling wine. We see a number of traders every year getting into trouble for having draft Prosecco in their bars, because by definition it can't be draft Prosecco because you can't do it in bulk. It's got to be in bottle. Scotch whisky, for those of you who deal in Scotch whisky, you'll know that the definition of Scotch whisky is very highly regulated. It's got to be distilled, blended, matured in Scotland. Blended Scotch whisky, so 90% of the product roughly, doesn't have to be bottled in Scotland. It can be bottled wherever you like. So there's an advantage there in that you can take cask strength whisky at 65% or so. You can then take it to its market, and you can then use water from that market to bring it down to consumer strength in the market. So you don't have to export water and pay for it. So, great idea. You can't do that with malt whisky. You have to bottle that in Scotland. They're changing the technical specifications so you can do larger format bottlings and export it in containers of greater than 2 litres. But you have to be very, very careful with malt. You can't just take out 1,000 litre IBC of malt and bottle it somewhere. Doesn't work. Other spirits products can be bottled outside their production area, but again, as a producer and indeed as a customer, you might not want that. If you've got a premium product, as part of the story of the product and as part of the marketing of the product, you might want to say it's made in country X, it's bottled in country X, the origin and the process by which you've handled it is really, really important. And if you're telling that marketing story, and if that's allowing you to put some premium on the price, you may well want to keep your goods bottled in the market, and that price premium outweighs your transport costs in transporting cased goods. So that's the market perception bit of the story. It's not the whole story, and as we heard a moment ago, it's perfectly possible to have premium goods that are dealt with in bulk. It's something to think about, though, when you're looking at the brand, when you're telling the story around the brand. And of course, a few minutes ago, I blithely said, oh, well, it makes sense to bottle near to your customers and near to their customers. Of course it does. Oh, but hold on, I've got to buy a bottling plant, or I've got to go out and get the services of a contract bottler. Now, you don't just walk down to the local contract bottler and say, oh, can you run me 100,000 litres or 100 million litres of this product? It's quite a complicated process. You're dealing with alcohol, so there's rules around excise duty, so their bottling plant needs to have the right excise authorisations, so you can bottle in duty suspense. They need to have all the right hygiene and handling controls. They need to be able to handle the volume of product. They need to be able to handle the bottle shapes. They need to be able to do changeover on the bottling line in the right way. So there's quite a big investment potentially in plant and machinery. Are you going to do that yourself? That's quite a big cost. Are you going to do that as a joint venture with somebody else? Are you going to contract it out? There's some fairly complicated negotiations around that to make sure that you get the right facility delivering you the right service. My kids think I'm daft because I enjoy visiting bottling plants and warehouses. I think it's great. And of the many that I've been lucky enough to visit, they are all completely different. Some of them look like a Bond villain's lair. Some of them look rather more rustic, shall we say. But they all have considerable history and considerable efficiencies that they're able to deliver to the market. But they're not the same. They're not interchangeable. So as somebody looking for a bottling facility and looking about how to manage that relationship, it's not a straightforward thing to do.